The white sticker under Ellen's piano did not belong there. My thumb caught its paper edge as I reached beneath the polished walnut to pick up a brass key that had fallen near the pedal. The adhesive felt gritty against my skin. Above me, the air conditioner hummed through the quiet room, and somewhere behind the kitchen wall, a cardboard box scraped across hardwood. The place smelled faintly of lemon furniture, polish, and packing tape. I peeled the sticker loose. Lot 47. Dad, why are you here? Claire's voice came from behind me. I straightened slowly. The sticker stuck to the pad of my thumb. My daughter stood in the doorway with one hand around her phone. She didn't look at the piano. She looked at me. I held up the label. What is this? You should have called. That wasn't my question. Her mouth tightened just enough for me to notice. We're trying to get organized. The piano had been Ellen's. After probate closed the previous year, it had been distributed to me, along with the other household property she and I had spent 32 years collecting. Claire knew that. Jason knew it too. A clean square on the floor caught my eye, where a mahogany side table used to sit. Where's the table? I asked. Claire glanced toward the hall. We moved some things. Where? Before she answered, the garage door rolled down with a heavy mechanical rattle. Footsteps crossed the mudroom, followed by the dry rub of work gloves being pulled off. Jason came in carrying a flattened cardboard box under one arm. Dust marked the front of his black shirt. He looked from me to Claire. What's going on? I showed him the sticker. Jason gave a short laugh. Dad, not everything needs an inspection report. That was an old line. At 61, after 3 decades running facilities across hotels from Raleigh to Charleston, I had heard some version of it from both my children whenever I asked for dates, receipts, names, or a reason something had changed. They called it my paperwork habit. My employers had called it keeping buildings open. Who has been in the house? I asked. Jason dropped the cardboard beside the kitchen doorway. People come over. Vendors? His eyes moved to Claire. That was answer enough to make me ask another question. 2 picture hooks were bare on the wall behind him. Ellen's landscape painting had hung there for years. A blue-gray lake with a narrow strip of sunset across the water. Where's your mother's painting? Storage, Jason said. What storage? For crying out loud, Dad. He rubbed both hands over his face. We decluttered, that's all. Claire stepped between us without actually moving very far. She had always been good at that, placing a calm sentence exactly where an argument might start. We're trying to live like adults, she said. You gave us this space, and now every time you come in, you act like we're being audited. I looked around the room. My house, my tax bill, my insurance. Their groceries sometimes too, though I had stopped paying those months earlier. You were given a place to stay, I said. You weren't given my furniture. Jason's jaw shifted. There it is. There what is? The control thing. I folded the sticker once, then opened it again. The crease split the word lot through the middle. Did you sell anything that belongs to me? Neither of them answered. The silence did more than shouting would have. Claire set her phone face down on the entry table. You already sent us that termination notice. You already filed in court. Now you show up unannounced and start accusing us of stealing. The tenancy ended before today, I said. The hearing is May 18th. That case has nothing to do with this label. Jason took one step toward me. You hear yourself? Yes. You're throwing your own kids out, and now you want to inventory the walls. I asked if you sold my property. His voice jumped. Stay out of our lives. We don't need you anymore. For a second, the only sound was the refrigerator motor kicking on. Claire didn't tell him to take it back. She picked up her phone and said almost gently, maybe that's best for everyone. I looked at my son, then at my daughter. 2 grown people standing in a house worth about $1.8 million that I had paid for, telling me they no longer needed me while refusing to say where my belongings had gone. So I said nothing. I slipped lot 47 into my shirt pocket and walked out. If you come to these stories for family betrayal, buried secrets, and the kind of revenge that has to be earned one choice at a time, subscribe so you can hear more stories like this. The gatehouse was less than a minute from my driveway. I had nearly reached my truck when the guard opened the side window. Mr. Caldwell? I stopped. A printer clicked behind him. The booth smelled of burnt coffee through the open glass. "We've got a new vendor list from Miss Caldwell," he said. "I just need to verify whether she still has guest scheduling." "Who's on the list?" He turned the monitor slightly away out of habit. "I can't release the report from here. Manager has to pull it. I'm still the account administrator." "Yes, sir." "Then have the manager send me every vendor entry for the last 6 weeks." The guard nodded. "I can put in the request." "Please do." I sat in my truck without starting it. Lot 47 lay against my chest inside the pocket. My attorney, Martin Wells, answered on the 4th ring. "Thomas, the possession hearing is still Monday? May 18th. Nothing has changed." "Good." I watched the gate arm lift for a delivery van. "Different question. Do Claire or Jason have any authority to sell personal property in the house?" Martin paused. "Not from anything you've given me." "No. Why are you asking about a sale?" A delivery van rolled past, tires crunching over the gravel at the edge of the pavement. "I found a numbered lot tag under Ellen's piano." Martin's tone changed. Not louder, just slower. "Don't confront them again today. Photograph what you can lawfully document. Preserve your records. Send me the tag. I already left." Good. That word bothered me more than it should have. By the time I reached my rented apartment in Charlotte, the crease in the sticker had softened from sitting in my pocket. I laid it beside my laptop and opened the gray file box I kept in the hall closet. Ellen had hated filing cabinets but loved knowing where things were. Receipts went into labeled envelopes. Insurance photographs went onto a flash drive. After she died, I had carried those habits through probate, because doing paperwork was easier than walking through rooms where her voice no longer came from the next doorway. One insurance photograph showed her at the piano, shoulders angled toward me, one hand hovering above the keys. Another showed the far wall. The landscape painting was there. I opened the probate distribution folder. Paper whispered under my fingers as I found the schedule of household property. Piano, painting, silver service, 2 framed prints. The mahogany side table, distributed to Thomas Caldwell. I pulled up a photograph from 6 months earlier and set it beside the current room picture I had taken before leaving. 1 missing object could be moved. 2 could be storage. By the 7th mark on my notepad, I stopped giving the empty spaces names. An email arrived from the community manager. Subject: Requested access activity. The attachment showed guest and vendor entries for the previous 6 weeks. Most were names I recognized. Landscaper, pool service, appliance repair. 1 company appeared 3 times. North Lake Estate Services. I read it again, then typed the name into a search window. Their website opened to a page advertising estate liquidation, consignment, and household sales around Lake Norman. A public preview sat halfway down the page. The first photograph showed a dining set I didn't recognize. The second showed silver. The third made my fingers stop on the mouse. Ellen's piano filled the screen. Same walnut case, same small scratch near the left leg, where Jason had hit it with a toy truck when he was 6. A white sticker sat under the edge. Beneath the photograph were 5 words. Lot 47. Grand piano. Sale pending. Mr. Caldwell, I can place a temporary hold on the piano, but I can't open the seller account to you over the phone. The woman from North Lake Estate Services spoke carefully, as if each word had been checked by somebody standing over her shoulder. I had called the moment their office opened. My coffee had gone untouched long enough to form a thin skin at the edge of the mug. "What do you need from me?" I asked. "Proof that you own the item you're disputing. Something showing the piano was distributed to you, plus an inventory photograph if you have one." "I have both. Send those first. Once our compliance manager reviews them, we can stop release while ownership is being questioned." I looked at the gray probate folder beside my laptop. 12 months earlier, that paperwork had felt like an inventory of everything Ellen would never touch again. Now it was the reason somebody could not load her piano onto a truck. What about the rest of the property in the sale? "I can't discuss another seller's account until ownership is established." Another seller. I wrote the phrase on my pad. Then I sent only what she requested. The final probate distribution page, the insurance photograph, and the receipt for the piano. No accusations, no story about my children, no demand that the woman decide who was lying. 27 minutes later, an email arrived. Lot 47 hold confirmed. For the first time since I had peeled that white label from the piano, something had stopped moving away from me, but only one thing. The hold protected the piano. It did not tell me who had listed it, how many other pieces had already left, or whether any buyer had carried something of Ellen's through a front door I would never see. Northlake had frozen one transaction because I could prove one item belonged to me. The rest still had to be earned, document by document. The rest of the morning went into a spreadsheet. That probably would have made Jason laugh. It was the kind of thing he meant when he said I could turn breakfast into an inspection report. But memory is slippery, especially inside a house where people have been moving things around. Paper is less cooperative. I pulled the probate inventory, Ellen's insurance schedule, old receipts, maintenance photographs, and pictures from holidays and birthdays. 3 columns went across the screen. Property distributed to me. Property that might belong to Claire or Jason. Uncertain. I refused to put anything in the first column because I merely remembered buying it. A pair of lamps stayed uncertain until I found the receipt. A cedar chest went into Claire's column because Ellen had promised it to her years earlier, and the probate distribution reflected that. Jason's old record collection stayed his. By noon, 12 items sat in the first column and did not appear in the recent photographs of the house. The landscape painting, the mahogany side table, Ellen's silver service, 2 framed botanical prints, a brass floor lamp, a set of crystal glasses we had received for our wedding, and more. An appraisal from years earlier carried my signature at the bottom. The first stroke of the T came down hard, then curled backward before the rest of my name moved forward. Ellen used to tease me about it. You start every signature by changing your mind, she had once said. I put the appraisal aside. The gate report arrived before I finished lunch. Northlake Estate Services had entered the community 3 times in 6 weeks. Every visit landed on a weekday when my consulting calendar put me in Charlotte. That was not all. A photographer had been admitted on a Tuesday afternoon. An appraiser came 9 days later. No company names I recognized. No calls asking me to approve either visit. My finger stopped above the trackpad when another thought came back to me. The old tablet. It was still in the bottom drawer of the desk at the lake house, unless somebody had moved it. Claire had used it during Ellen's last year, because the music app was already set up and Ellen liked having playlists beside her chair. I had never needed it afterward. At some point, I had simply stopped thinking about it. That changed now. I signed out old sessions on the accounts I could reach, changed passwords, and saved the security notices. I did not wipe the tablet remotely. If it contained something useful, erasing it would be doing somebody else a favor. My phone rang before I finished. Claire. I thought we agreed on space, my daughter said. Her voice had the same level tone she used with clients when a house inspection found something expensive. You asked me to stay out of your life, I said. I'm respecting that. Then why are you calling companies connected to the house? There it was. Not why did you contact an estate company? Why are you calling companies connected to the house? Who is Northlake Estate Services? The line went quiet for a moment. Claire answered, A consignment company. For what? Things we don't use. I leaned back from the desk. Who is we? Dad, this is exactly what I mean. Who is we, Claire? You've said yourself that house is too much for one person. I said it was quiet after your mother died. You asked me what the market was doing around the lake. Months earlier, I had. We had been standing on the back deck, and 2 houses across the cove had sold within weeks of each other. I had asked what they brought because Claire sold real estate for a living. That wasn't permission to sell anything. I didn't say it was. Then answer the question I actually asked. Her breath came softly through the phone. I'm not doing this with you. The call ended. I kept the phone in my hand. Claire had managed to turn 2 true things into the outline of something I had never said. The house was quiet. I had asked about the market. Neither sentence meant I planned to leave. The community manager agreed to meet me at the clubhouse that afternoon. I did not go to the house. The hearing was still approaching, and I had no interest in giving Claire another reason to describe a property dispute as a family confrontation. The clubhouse smelled of chlorine from the indoor pool and the sharp cleaner they used on the tile. Before the manager came out, a familiar voice called my name. Thomas? Marjorie Bell lived 4 houses down from mine. She and Ellen had traded tomato plants every summer for nearly 15 years. She came toward me with a paper cup in one hand. "Well," Marjorie said, "how are you settling in?" I thought she meant Charlotte. "Fine. The apartment is small, but it's close to work." Her forehead creased. "No, I meant the new place." "What new place?" The cup stopped halfway to her mouth. "Oh. Marjorie?" She lowered her voice. "Claire said you'd moved into a senior community near Charlotte." For a moment, the pool filter behind the wall seemed louder. "She said that?" Marjorie looked toward the front desk. "She said the kids were helping clear the house because you'd relocated permanently. I assumed you wanted less upkeep." "When did she tell you?" "I don't know exactly. More than a month ago. Before Carol's birthday dinner. More than a month. Before the lot sticker. Before Jason told me to stay out of his life. Before I had sent my final demand that they leave." The community manager arrived carrying a printed access report and an apologetic expression. Inside his office, I asked about the 2 unfamiliar entries. He turned the paper toward me. The photographer was approved through guest scheduling. The note says property media. I tapped the next line. "And this appraiser?" The manager read it twice. "Residential valuation. Not contents?" "No, sir. It specifically says residential." I took out my phone and opened my consulting calendar. The photographer had entered on April 7th. The appraiser had come on April 16th. Claire had told Marjorie the 1st was moving before either one of those dates. And every one of them came before the afternoon I found Lot 47 under Ellen's piano. I folded the access report once and slid it into my folder. If Claire and Jason were only clearing out furniture they claimed nobody used, there was no reason to photograph the property itself. There was even less reason to value the house. North Lake is preserving the records, but they are not giving you somebody else's account. Martin Wells tapped the end of his pen against the conference table once, then stopped. The sound was small in his office, almost lost beneath the vent above us. Between us sat copies of the probate distribution, the insurance schedule, and the access report from the Lake community. "That sounds like a careful way of saying no," I said. "It is a careful way of saying they have lawyers too." Martin slid a letter toward me. North Lake Estate Services had acknowledged our ownership dispute that morning. Pickup on the remaining contested items was suspended. Any unpaid proceeds tied to those items would stay put while their compliance team reviewed what Claire had submitted. No seller dashboard, no password, no invitation to dig through their system. What they would provide, after confirming my ownership, was narrower. The intake record for the disputed property, copies of the authorization they relied on, and a transaction export connected to the items listed in my probate documents. "That's enough to start," Martin said. I looked at the letter again. Did they know? Know what? That the property wasn't Claire's. Martin leaned back. "We don't have evidence of that. What we have is a company saying it received paperwork from a family member who claimed the owner had permanently relocated." The words sat differently when a lawyer said them. Permanently relocated. Not visiting Charlotte for consulting work. Not spending weekdays in an apartment because the drive was easier. Gone. By late afternoon, North Lake's compliance manager sent the first document. It was only 3 pages. The heading called it a household contents seller authorization. It was not a deed. It was not a power of attorney, and it did not give Claire any authority over the house itself. The document said Thomas Caldwell had authorized Claire Caldwell to manage the consignment and sale of household contents connected to the Lake Norman residence. My name appeared at the bottom in typed form. Below it was a notation that authorization had been confirmed electronically. The email address listed beside the confirmation was mine. I read it twice, then a third time. Martin watched me from across the table. "That your address?" "Yes." You send anything to North Lake? No. Did you tell Claire she could send something for you? No. He made a note. Then we preserve first and explain later. I rubbed my thumb across the edge of the paper. The seller authorization bothered me more than the lot sticker had. A sticker could have been put on a piano in 10 seconds. This had a date, a name, a company form, and an electronic confirmation tied to an address I had used for years. Someone had built a trail. I just did not know how far it went. The transaction export arrived the next morning. North Lake had limited it to property covered by the documents I had supplied. Even that ran several pages. Lot numbers filled the left column. Item descriptions filled the next. Closed. Paid. Pending pickup. Released. I recognized too many descriptions. The landscape painting was gone. So were the botanical prints. The mahogany side table had sold. A set of crystal glasses Ellen and I had received at our wedding had already been released to a buyer. Then, I found the silver service. My hand stopped halfway to the coffee cup. Ellen had used that silver twice a year, Thanksgiving and Christmas. She would sit at the kitchen table the night before and polish every piece with an old cotton cloth until the black came off on her fingers. After probate, the set had been distributed to me, along with the rest of the household property listed in the final order. North Lake had sold it. The buyer had already taken possession. Martin had warned me that disputed ownership did not turn the world backward. Some unsold items could be frozen. Money still in the company's control could be held. Property already released to buyers would take more work, and some pieces might never come back. The numbers at the bottom of the export made the scale harder to dismiss. Gross sales tied to the disputed lots were about $182,400. After commissions and fees, the net was roughly $160,000. $132,000 had already been paid out. $28,000 remained on hold. I checked the recipient line. It did not say Thomas Caldwell. It did not say Claire Caldwell. It said Caldwell Transition LLC. I called Martin. He answered with, "Tell me you didn't call your daughter first." I didn't. Good. What is Caldwell Transition LLC? I don't know yet. Don't assume. We can verify the entity separately. North Lake sent $132,000 from my property to it. That is what the export appears to show. Appears. Martin used that word when he wanted me to stay inside what the paper could actually prove. I stared at Ellen's silver service on the old insurance photograph until the bright forks blurred into one strip of reflected light. Then I texted Jason. Where did the money go? He called in less than a minute. So now you're tracing money? My son asked. I asked where it went. You're making this sound like we robbed a bank. Where did it go, Jason? A cabinet door shut on his end of the line. His voice dropped. It was for everyone. We were trying to fix the mess. Which mess? You know exactly what I mean. No, I don't. Jason exhaled hard. My business. The house. Claire's stuff. Everything piling up. How much did you get? That's not the point. It became the point when you sold property that wasn't yours. Mom would have wanted us to stop drowning. I let that sentence sit between us. Then I asked, "How much, Jason?" Claire put my reserve on the transition sheet. I straightened in my chair. What transition sheet? Nothing. Jason, forget it. You just told me there's a sheet. I said, Claire handles the paperwork. What paperwork? You always do this. His voice sharpened. You get one word and turn it into a deposition. I asked where the money went. You want answers? Talk to Claire. The call ended. I wrote down exactly what he had said before memory could polish it into something cleaner. My reserve. Transition sheet. Claire handles the paperwork. That did not tell me whether Jason knew where the money actually went. It told me he had seen some kind of allocation and expected a piece of it. North Lake's intake notes arrived an hour later. The first paragraph was enough. Seller family reports owner has relocated to senior living near Charlotte. Adult children authorized to transition household contents and prepare residence for next phase. I read the sentence aloud to Martin. He said, "That language matters. It's fiction. I know, but right now we need the original email chain. electronic confirmation records, timestamps, and whatever device information they retained. And the house? Martin turned the intake page over and put his finger on my access report. Photographer. Residential appraiser. We treat that as a separate problem until we know what it is. Selling household contents without authority is one issue. Misrepresenting authority over real estate would be another. He sent a preservation demand while I was still sitting there. North Lake responded near closing time, with a forwarded section of the email chain used during intake. Most of it matched what I already knew. Claire discussed pickup dates. A North Lake employee asked whether stairs would affect removal. Somebody confirmed that the piano needed professional movers. Then, I reached the last message. Claire had forwarded photographs to the estate company. Her note mentioned that some images came from a separate property file and should not be used in the contents listing. Under the message sat an attachment reference. The attachment itself was not included. I read the file name once, then again. Slower. Caldwell Residence. Private offering. Draft 2. North Lake had not opened it because it was unrelated to their sale. I closed the email and looked at the access report beside my hand. Property media. Residential valuation. Private offering. Those words had nothing to do with Ellen Silver. And for the first time, I stopped asking what else my children had sold. I started asking what they were preparing to sell next. You understand this judgment doesn't let you change the locks today, correct? Martin kept his voice low as we stepped away from the magistrate's courtroom in Iredell County. Behind us, a wooden door swung shut, and the latch clicked hard enough to carry down the hall. I understand, I said. Claire and Jason were 20 feet away, talking beside a vending machine. Jason's voice rose first. This is retaliation. Claire touched his arm and said something I couldn't hear. The hearing had taken less than 20 minutes. The written tenancy termination was in the file. So were the dates, the notices, and the expired agreement that had allowed my children to stay in the house after Ellen died. Claire had tried to steer the conversation toward family conflict, my calls to North Lake, and the property dispute. The magistrate brought her back to possession. The judgment went in my favor. That did not mean a sheriff was waiting outside with a locksmith. There was still an appeal period. Martin had explained the timing twice before we entered the courtroom and once more after we left. Let the process run, he said. I planned to. Jason looked over at me. Claire didn't. I walked out carrying one folder and a question that had become larger than the case we had just won. Private offering. In the parking lot, I emailed Martin the file name from North Lake's chain, along with the dates for the photographer and residential appraiser. Then I called the brokerage where Claire worked. The receptionist transferred me twice before a man named Robert Green came on the line. This is Robert, broker in charge. My name is Thomas Caldwell. I own a property on Lake Norman. I have reason to believe it's being marketed through your office. A pause. What property? I gave him the address. Keyboard keys clicked. I'll need to verify ownership before I discuss anything connected to a client file, Robert said. That's fine. And you're saying you did not authorize marketing? I'm saying I have not signed a listing agreement with your firm. The keys stopped. Robert's next words came slower. Give me an email address. I'm sending an identity verification request now. Less than an hour later, he called back. Mr. Caldwell, I've confirmed the recorded owner. I need to ask you something plainly. Have you authorized your daughter to act for you in the sale of that property? No. Have you signed anything electronically? No. Another silence. Then I'm opening an internal review. By early afternoon, Robert sent me a copy of an internal marketing brochure. The first page showed my house from the water, not a casual photograph from Claire's phone. Professional work. The lawn was cut tight, the windows reflected the lake, and the dock sat at an angle that made the lot look wider than it was. I kept scrolling. Living room, kitchen, primary bedroom, back terrace, then the piano. Ellen's piano sat near the windows, polished and staged beneath a vase of white flowers that had never belonged there. The asking price appeared near the top, $1,800,000. Below it, The seller contact routed through Claire. A short description said the owner had relocated and the family was completing a transition. Not considering, not discussing, had relocated. I printed the page and laid it beside North Lake's intake note. The language was nearly the same. Martin read both when I brought them to his office. Same story, I said. Same core representation, he corrected. We still don't know who wrote each version. Claire's name is on the brochure. Yes, that tells us who was presenting the property. It doesn't yet tell us who created every document. That distinction was becoming familiar. Robert called while I was still there. There's more, he said. I put him on speaker with permission. Robert explained that Claire had not merely circulated photographs. His office file contained a written listing agreement bearing my electronic signature. An interested buyer had made an offer close to the asking price. The file also contained an electronically signed purchase contract showing seller acceptance in my name. My chair creaked when I leaned back. Has money changed hands? I asked. The buyer delivered earnest money to the escrow agent and a due diligence fee under the contract. Martin raised one finger before speaking. Has a deed been signed by Mr. Caldwell? No, Robert said. Not a deed suitable for closing. Can title transfer without one? No, that mattered. My house had not been sold out from under me. No buyer owned it. No deed had been recorded. But somebody had taken a transaction far enough that strangers had put money down believing I intended to sell. When is closing? I asked. Robert gave me the date. It was less than 2 weeks away. My phone buzzed before the call ended. Claire. I let it ring once more, then answered. Dad, what are you doing? Her voice was tight now, stripped of the soft patience she had used at the house. I called your broker. You had no reason to drag my office into this. My address is in their file. You asked me what the house was worth. I asked what houses around the lake were selling for. You also said the place was too much. I said it was quiet after Mom died. That's not the only thing you said. The sentence landed because it was true. There had been other conversations. Months earlier, standing near the dock, I had told Claire I probably would not need that much space forever. Once, after paying for a roof repair, I had said maybe one day I would sell and let somebody else worry about gutters and docks. Ordinary sentences. Tentative ones. Claire gathered them like receipts. You told me you were thinking about downsizing, she said. Thinking is not authorizing. You're making this adversarial when it doesn't have to be. Did I sign a listing agreement? You authorized me to handle things. That isn't what I asked. Dad, if you keep forcing everyone into corners, don't act surprised when this gets ugly. The line went dead. I did not call back. Instead, I opened a blank email and wrote one sentence to Claire. All further communication regarding the house, its contents, or any proposed sale must be in writing. Martin read it before I sent it. Good, he said. No speeches. I wasn't planning one. Robert's next email arrived near 5. Attached were the listing agreement, its electronic signature certificate, and the buyer-facing purchase contract showing acceptance. I opened the listing first. My name appeared where the seller should sign. Thomas Caldwell. The signature looked close enough that a stranger might have accepted it without a second thought. Then I opened the purchase contract. Same name, same style. I reached into my folder and pulled out the old appraisal from among Ellen's probate records, the one I had signed years earlier. My real signature started with a hard downward stroke in the T, then curled backward before moving ahead into the rest of my name. The signatures on Claire's documents did not. Their T went forward cleanly. No backward hook. I did not tell Martin that proved who signed them. It didn't. What it proved was simpler. I didn't make these. Martin moved his chair closer and studied the pages. Then we contest both and preserve the electronic records. I placed the listing agreement beside the purchase contract. One signature had put my house on the market. Another had told a buyer I accepted an offer. 2 separate steps. 2 places where someone had used my name. Whatever Claire meant when she said I had authorized her, this was no longer a family argument about what I might have said beside a lake months ago. Martin pointed to the electronic certificates. These won't tell us everything by themselves. They may show timestamps, delivery addresses, device information, or the path used to complete the signatures. We ask for the audit trail. We don't guess. I nodded. My old job had taught me the same lesson in a different language. When a fire alarm failed in a hotel, you did not start with the person you disliked most. You started with the panel, the maintenance log, the service ticket, and the time the signal stopped behaving the way it should. Paper first, people second. The purchase contract remained open on my screen. Near the signature line was the date someone had accepted the buyer's offer in my name. It was days before I found Lot 47. Someone had started signing for me. By 9 the next morning, Robert Greene had frozen Claire out of the Caldwell file. His email was brief. The brokerage would not allow any further marketing, negotiation, amendment, or seller instruction through my daughter while it reviewed the authority documents. The closing attorney had been notified that ownership and seller consent were disputed, and the buyer had been told the transaction could not proceed as scheduled. I read the message twice before forwarding it to Martin. He called almost immediately. "This protects the house for now," Martin said. "It does not decide who created those signatures, and it does not fix the personal property that's already gone." I know. Do you? The question irritated me because he knew I did. Then I looked at the photograph of Ellen's silver service still lying beside my laptop. "Yes," I said. "I do." The piano remained on hold with North Lake. The house could not close. Two things that had been moving without my permission had stopped. For about 3 hours, that was enough. Claire texted shortly after noon. "We should talk without lawyers. Dinner. Neutral place. Jason needs to be there." I sent the message to Martin before answering. His response came back quickly. "You can meet them. Don't sign anything. Don't surrender originals. If they hand you documents, bring them back." I chose a steakhouse near Mooresville where Ellen and I had eaten on anniversaries when we did not feel like driving into Charlotte. I almost changed the location for that reason. Then I decided Claire did not get to claim every room that held a memory of her mother. Jason was already in a booth when I arrived. His water glass was empty, and a folded napkin had been twisted into a rope beside his plate. Claire sat across from him with a dark blue folder centered in front of the empty seat they had left for me. No menus were open. I sat down. Claire pushed the folder across the table. "This can still be fixed." "What can?" "The technical problems." Technical. A word you use when you want something to sound smaller than it is. I opened the folder. The first document confirmed the listing agreement. The second ratified the purchase contract. A third authorized the closing attorney to continue toward settlement once title requirements were satisfied. Fresh signature lines waited at the bottom of each page. My name was typed beneath them. Blank this time. Yellow tabs marked every place Claire wanted my initials or signature. She had even included a short cover page explaining that the earlier electronic documents were being confirmed for clarity. Nothing on the page used the word false. Nothing said disputed. "Read quickly." The packet made it sound as though a paperwork question had appeared and the owner was simply cleaning it up. I ran one finger over the first yellow tab. "How long did it take you to put this together?" Claire's eyes stayed on the folder. "My office helped me understand what would be needed. Today, we've been trying to keep the transaction from falling apart." That was not an answer to the question, so I let it remain unanswered. "If you sign clean documents now," Claire said, "Robert can tell everyone the authority question has been resolved." Everyone meaning the buyer? The buyer. The closing attorney. The office. People who have already spent money because they believed this transaction was moving forward. Jason picked up his water glass, remembered it was empty, and put it down again. Claire continued, "Nobody has to turn this into something bigger." I looked at her. "Bigger than somebody signing my name twice?" "It doesn't have to be framed that way." "How should it be framed?" "As a family, trying to carry out what you already said you wanted." The waiter came over, took one look at the table, and asked whether we needed more time. Claire said yes before either Jason or I could answer. When he left, Jason leaned toward me. "Dad, I'm getting collection calls every day. Claire glanced at him. Jason. No. He should know. My son rubbed his thumb along the condensation ring on the table. The business debt isn't waiting for everyone to finish arguing. You told me the estate sale was supposed to help with that, I said. It was. North Lake shows about $182,400 in gross sales tied to the property I documented. More than $130,000 has already been paid out. Why are you still waiting for money? Jason looked at Claire, not at me. Claire closed her eyes for half a second, then reached for her water. There are costs you don't understand. Then explain them. This isn't an accounting meeting. You brought documents asking me to sell a $1.8 million house. I brought a way out. For whom? Jason shifted against the leather seat. The vinyl gave a faint squeak beneath him. Claire's voice stayed controlled. The house is sitting there, while you rent an apartment in Charlotte. Jason is buried. I have obligations tied up in all of this too. Meanwhile, taxes, upkeep, insurance, utilities, and repairs keep coming. You're protecting an empty house, as if the building matters more than the people in it. It wasn't empty when you sold Ellen Silver. Jason looked down. Claire's fingers tightened around her glass. We can talk about the contents separately. Convenient. Dad, please. Her voice softened. You can stop all of this tonight. I turned back to the documents. The original listing agreement was clipped behind the new confirmation page. The purchase contract followed it. I put one finger beside the first electronic signature. Why does my signature already appear here? Claire did not answer immediately. My finger moved to the purchase contract. And here? You authorized me to handle the sale, she said. Show me. I will. Show me now. You know, conversations happen, Dad. Conversations are not signatures. Jason shoved the twisted napkin aside. Mom would hate this. I looked at him. He swallowed but kept going. She'd hate seeing us sitting here acting like enemies over money and a house. I closed the folder. I could have told him what Ellen hated. Waste. Dishonesty. People using her name to end arguments she was no longer alive to answer. I did not give either of them that fight. Your mother isn't signing these papers, I said. Neither am I. Claire's chair moved back an inch. So that's it? For tonight. You realize the buyer can make claims because of this. Then whoever told the buyer I agreed to sell can explain why. For the first time that evening, Claire's voice lost its careful edge. You always need someone to be at fault. I stood and left the folder on the table. No. I need my name to mean I was actually there when it was used. Back at my apartment, the refrigerator compressor hummed in the kitchen while I read Robert's final confirmation. The property file was frozen. No closing. No additional seller instruction through Claire. The brokerage had started preserving its records. A second email from North Lake confirmed that the piano remained blocked from release. House stopped. Piano stopped. I sat in the quiet with those two facts for a few minutes. Then Martin forwarded something Claire had submitted to Robert after dinner. His message contained one line. Call me before you respond to anyone. The attachment was an email copied from the brokerage file. The sender address was mine. The recipient was Claire. Its date was weeks earlier, before I found the white lot sticker beneath Ellen's piano. The body contained one sentence. I authorize Claire to handle the sale of the Lake Norman house and related contents. I opened my own email account and searched the exact wording. Nothing. I checked the sent folder. Nothing. Trash. Nothing. Archive. Nothing. The email in Robert's file still carried my address at the top, along with a timestamp and the message Claire had apparently forwarded as proof that I had given her permission before any dispute began. My phone rang. Martin, don't tell me what you think happened yet, he said. First question. Did you send that email? No. Second question. Can you prove you didn't? I stared at my own address on the screen. For every missing table, every lot number, every false sentence about senior living, I had found a document that pushed the story in one direction. This one pushed back. No, I said. Not yet. Before we accuse anybody, we prove where you were. Martin's voice came through my phone before I had finished making coffee. The email Claire had produced was still open on my laptop, my own address sitting above words I had never written. "I know where I was," I said. "Good. Now prove it." That was fair. The message had been sent on May 9th at 10:17 in the morning. I opened my consulting calendar first. A fire protection contractor in Charlotte had signed me into a renovation site at 8:30 that day. My parking receipt showed I had entered the garage across the street 20 minutes earlier. A lunch receipt put me 3 blocks away shortly after noon. None of that proved I had not sent an email, so I kept going. The client's visitor log showed my badge active at the building until after 4. Text messages with the project superintendent referred to a failed alarm test at 11:12. My laptop history showed activity on the client network during the same period. I sent copies to Martin. His answer arrived 5 minutes later. Useful for location, not enough for authorship. I understood the distinction. When a hotel sprinkler alarm failed, knowing which technician was in the building did not tell you which valve had been touched. It narrowed the field. That was all. The forwarded message from Robert included more than the sentence Claire wanted everyone to read. I opened the header information and copied it into a separate file without changing anything. The dates matched. The routing information was real enough to deserve preservation, but it was not a little arrow pointing at a guilty person. My email provider had a security page I had rarely used. Under recent devices, I found my current phone, my laptop, and 2 older sessions that should have meant nothing. One did. Caldwell home tablet. I sat forward. The device had connected to my account on May 9th, 10:11 in the morning, 6 minutes before the authorization email was sent. The location information was broad. Not a street address, but the network record matched the service area around the lake house. I downloaded the account activity report and took screenshots of the page with the date and device name. Then I called Martin. "Old tablet," I said. "What about it?" "It accessed my account 6 minutes before the email went out." "Where was the tablet?" "In the bottom drawer of my desk at the house, last time I saw it." "Could you have taken it to Charlotte and forgotten?" "No." "Can you prove that?" I almost answered too quickly. Instead, I opened my notes from the day I had packed the apartment. Laptop, chargers, work folders, 2 shirts, toiletries, no tablet. "That proves what I packed," I said. "Not where the tablet stayed." "Exactly. Save the log. Don't stretch it." Claire had known the tablet existed. During Ellen's last year, she used it often because the music app was already signed in, and Ellen liked old standards playing low beside her chair. Jason knew where it was, too. Neither fact made either of them the person who wrote an email. Not yet. I pulled the community access report back onto my screen. May 9th. Claire's vehicle entered at 9:38 that morning. Jason's truck came through at 9:56. Claire left shortly before noon. Jason stayed until after 2. Both had been at the house when the tablet connected to my account. I printed the page and placed it beside the provider log. 10:11. Tablet session. 10:17. Authorization. Email. 2 people inside the house. 1 person named in the email. Still not proof of who typed a sentence. The temptation was to line up the papers, circle Claire's name, and call the problem solved. 30 years in facilities had cured me of that kind of confidence. Bad records can agree with each other. People repeat the same wrong information. A timestamp can tell you when a machine did something without telling you whose fingers were on it. So I made a 4th column on my spreadsheet. What this does not prove: the gate record did not prove who touched the tablet. The tablet log did not prove who wrote the message. My Charlotte records did not make it impossible that I had asked someone else to send an email for me. That last possibility stayed on the page because Claire would use it if she could. Martin sent a formal preservation notice concerning the old tablet and the home network equipment. He also warned me not to go into the house and seize the device while the possession process was still running. "You don't need a dramatic recovery scene," he said. "You need the data not destroyed. I'm getting tired of you knowing what I'm about to do. That's why you pay me." It was the closest either of us came to laughing. By mid-afternoon, I called Jason. He answered on the 4th ring. "What now?" Did you use my old tablet on May 9th? Nothing came back for several seconds. Then Jason said, Claire said you'd forgotten the password. I did not move. I had not mentioned Claire. What password? You know what I mean. No, tell me. The tablet, your email, whatever. Did you use it? Jason's breathing changed against the phone. You're trying to make this criminal now. I asked whether you used my tablet. This is exactly what Claire said you'd do. Turn paperwork into a weapon. Did you use it on May 9th? I was helping her with something. What? Dad, stop. With what? The line went dead. I wrote down his words exactly. Claire said you'd forgotten the password. I was helping her with something. No additions. No interpretation. My phone rang again less than 15 minutes later. Claire. Of course. Leave Jason out of this, she said as soon as I answered. He put himself in it. He's barely holding things together. His creditors are calling him at work. He isn't sleeping. I asked him about my tablet. You're cornering him over a family email. A family email? Another pause. Claire changed direction. Even if that message was sent from the house, that doesn't mean you didn't ask us to send it. I looked at the screen even though there was nothing to see. That's different from saying, I sent it. I'm saying you authorized me. Yesterday, you gave Robert an email from my account because it reflected what you told us. Did I send it? Claire exhaled through her nose. You're obsessed with mechanics because you don't want to deal with the substance. Did I send it? You told me to handle the transition. When? We've had this conversation. Then give me the date. I'm not doing an interrogation. She hung up. The story had moved. At dinner, Claire's position had been that I authorized the sale. The email made it look as though I had personally written the authorization. Now, after I mentioned the tablet to Jason, she was saying the message might have been sent for me. I saved the call notes with the others. Near 5, Martin forwarded a public business registry search. Caldwell Transition LLC had been formed 6 months earlier. Manager, Claire Caldwell. Registered office. The address of a commercial mail center in Mooresville. Jason's name appeared nowhere. That alone doesn't tell us where the money went after North Lake paid the LLC, Martin said when I called. So how do we know? We follow records we can actually obtain. North Lake's council has provided its payout confirmations. I've also received a limited transaction record tied to the disputed funds through the preservation process. It does not give us Claire's whole bank account, and I don't want you treating it like it does. What does it give us? One outgoing transfer large enough to matter. A document arrived while he was speaking. I opened it. Caldwell Transition LLC appeared at the top. The transaction memo below referred to a real estate investment obligation. Claire's name appeared in the associated settlement reference. Amount transferred, $105,000. I checked the North Lake numbers again. $132,000 had been paid into Claire's LLC. Jason had told me the estate sale was helping rescue his failed business. Claire had told me there were costs I did not understand. Now $105,000 of money generated from property distributed to me after Ellen's death was tied to a real estate obligation bearing Claire's name. I still did not know what the obligation was. I did not know whether Jason understood where the money had gone. But for the first time, the largest number in the estate sale did not point toward my son's debt. It pointed toward my daughter. How much did you see? Jason stood outside my apartment before I could answer the door all the way. He had not shaved. The collar of his work shirt was folded under on one side, and a paper envelope from a collection agency stuck out of his jacket pocket. I kept one hand on the door. Come in. He stepped past me without looking around. The apartment was small enough that 3 more steps put him at the kitchen table. He did not sit. How much? He asked again. North Lake paid $132,000 into Caldwell Transition LLC. I have a record tying $105,000 of that to a real estate obligation associated with Claire. Jason's mouth opened, then closed. That's not what she told me. What did she tell you? He pulled the collection envelope from his pocket and slapped it on the table. That the estate money was being divided to stabilize everything until the house closed. How much reached you? About 27,000 went straight to creditors. I waited. That's it, he said. Enough to stop two of them from filing for a while. She told me the rest was tied up temporarily. Temporarily where? Jason rubbed both palms down his jeans. I asked her yesterday. She stopped answering. He took out his phone, tapped through several screens, and turned it toward me. A spreadsheet filled the display. I recognized the phrase before I recognized anything else. Transition sheet. You mentioned this before, I said. Claire gave me view access months ago. She said I could track my reserve without bothering her every time a payment moved. I did not touch his phone. Scroll. Jason did. The sheet was not a bank statement. It was Claire's working plan, arranged in rows with dates, expected proceeds, obligations, and notes. One line showed Jason creditor reserve at roughly $27,000. Another showed Claire bridge obligation at $105,000. Those numbers matched what I already had. Farther down, the house sale appeared as a projected event rather than completed money. Estimated commission after brokerage split was about $35,000. Then came a line that made me stop him. Family advance from Dad after closing. $160,000. I looked up. What is that? Jason's eyes stayed on the phone. Claire said, once the house sold, you'd help us get clean. Did I tell her that? No. Did I tell you that? His jaw moved. Not exactly. Not at all. He set the phone on the table. Another cell put Claire's original shortfall at just under $300,000. The $105,000 already moved, plus her expected commission and the so-called family advance, brought the plan close enough that I did not need a calculator to understand it. What is the bridge obligation? I asked. Jason rubbed his forehead. Some investment Claire guaranteed. She told me it was temporary, and that closing your house would give her room to straighten everything out. Straighten it out with whose money? He did not answer. The house itself was not going to deposit my money into Claire's account. She needed something from me after the sale. A real signature. Then, apparently, another check. Jason pulled out a chair and sat down hard. She said you'd do it. What exactly did she say? That once everything was committed, you wouldn't blow it up. Buyers, the office, my creditors, all of it. He looked toward the window. She said you'd be furious, but you'd fix it. The refrigerator clicked off behind us. For years, fix it had meant different things. A car repair Jason could not cover. Claire's emergency tax bill when she was starting out. A deposit after Ellen died, because neither child wanted to go back to an empty apartment. I had called those things help. Somewhere along the way, my children had started treating them like a forecast. What did you do? I asked. Jason looked back at me. With the house. With the estate company. Tell me your part. His fingers tightened around the edge of the chair. I let North Lake in. I know. I moved boxes into the garage before pickups. I gave the photographer the gate code Claire sent me. What else? He swallowed. I opened your old tablet. I said nothing. Claire said you'd authorized everything verbally, and she needed the old email account because you never answered fast enough. The password was saved. Did you send the authorization email? Jason looked down at the collection envelope. I opened the account. Claire told me what she needed. I sent something from the tablet. What did you send? The email you showed me. There it was, but it did not clean anything. Did you know my name was being used on documents? I knew, she said. You'd agreed. That isn't what I asked. His chair scraped back an inch. I didn't sit there comparing signatures, Dad. Did you know paperwork was being signed in my name? I knew paperwork was moving. I didn't ask how. That answer stayed between us. Not knowing because nobody told you is one thing. Not knowing because you decided not to ask is another. Jason unlocked his phone again. There are messages. He found the thread with Claire and scrolled back to May 9th. One message from her read, "Open Dad's tablet. I need the old account." A few minutes later, Jason had replied, "Done." Other messages discussed North Lake pickup windows and which rooms had been photographed. Nothing, said Claire forged a signature. Nothing said steal Dad's house. The language was ordinary enough to pass unnoticed if you did not know what followed. I gave Jason Martin's email address. Forward the thread to him exactly as it is. Don't crop it. Don't delete anything. Jason stared at the address. If I do that, Claire's finished with me. That's between you and Claire. And what about me? What about you? He stood. If you ratify the sale, she says the commission and the money after closing can put back what she used. Then maybe you could help me clear the rest before the collectors bury me. The old question formed almost by habit. How much do you still need? For most of Jason's adult life, that question had been the shortest road between his problem and my checkbook. Sometimes the money had come back. Usually it had not mattered whether it did. I had been paying for quiet as much as anything else. I could feel the words ready behind my teeth. I closed my mouth. Jason saw it. His shoulders shifted forward, waiting. Send Martin the messages, I said. Your debt is still yours. His face changed by degrees, rather than all at once. So you're just going to watch me go under. I'm not stopping you from telling the truth. That doesn't pay anybody. No. He picked up the envelope and left without saying goodbye. The door had barely latched when my phone buzzed with his forwarded messages. Martin received the same thread a minute later and replied that he would preserve the original export once Jason provided it. Claire's email arrived that evening. It was longer than anything she had sent since this started. She wrote that the buyer was considering claims over the failed transaction, that Robert's internal review had already damaged her standing at the brokerage, and that Jason was panicking and saying things he did not understand. She never mentioned the $105,000 transfer. She did not mention the transition sheet either. The last paragraph was only 3 lines. If you sign by Friday, I can still make everyone whole. We can restore what was used, protect Jason, and end this before it destroys all of us. After Friday, I can't promise that. I opened my calendar. Friday carried Claire's ultimatum and the buyer's remaining deadline. The possession case was moving on a separate clock toward the end of the appeal period, if Claire and Jason did not appeal or obtain a stay. 3 pressures were closing in, but only 2 landed on Friday. I printed Claire's email and laid it beside the unsigned documents from dinner. One signature could make the immediate noise quieter. It could rescue Jason from part of his debt. It could give Claire the money she had already counted on. It could turn disputed documents into a transaction I had eventually approved. All I had to do was sign my own name beneath a decision someone else had already made for me. The buyer's attorney sent the demand at 8:12 Friday morning. Martin forwarded it without comment, which was usually his way of telling me to read before I reacted. The letter said the buyer had spent money on inspections, legal review, financing, and due diligence in reliance on a contract carrying my name. It demanded a clear statement of seller authority and reserved whatever claims the buyer believed might exist because the closing had been delayed. I read every page. Then I read the purchase contract again. Nothing in either document required me to sell a house I had never agreed to sell. Martin called while I was still at the kitchen table. This is pressure, he said. It is not a court ruling. The buyer believed there was a valid seller. Their counsel is protecting them. I understand. Do you? Yes. They were lied to too. That is the useful part. Attached to the buyer's file was the same seller story I had already seen twice. Owner relocated. Family completing transition. Property being sold as part of downsizing. 3 different sets of people had been given the same version. North Lake. The brokerage. The buyer. The repetition mattered more than any single sentence. One vendor might have misunderstood Claire. A broker might have copied a bad note. A buyer might have assumed too much. But the same explanation had traveled through separate files before I ever challenged the sale. Somebody had not improvised it after our argument. The explanation had already been in circulation. I marked the phrase, relocated permanently in the buyer packet, and set it beside North Lake's intake note. Same idea, same timing, different audience. That did not prove every act in the chain. It did tell me the story had been prepared before I knew I was inside it. By 10, Robert Greene asked me to come to his office. Claire was already in the conference room when I arrived. A glass wall looked over a row of agent desks outside. I could hear phones, printer rollers, and the muffled ring of the front door every time someone entered the lobby. Robert sat at the end of the table with a legal pad. Claire had another blue folder in front of her. She did not greet me. Robert spoke first. "Mr. Caldwell," Claire asked, "for one opportunity to propose a clean resolution while I'm present." Claire opened the folder. Fresh documents. Again. "The buyer is still willing to close at the agreed price," she said. "I'll reduce my commission substantially. If Robert requires it, I'll waive the rest." Robert's pen stopped. Claire continued. "You sign a new authorization today, confirm the purchase contract, and the authority issue disappears. No one has to know how messy this got," she added. I looked at Robert. His expression did not change. But the pen stayed still. "Did you disclose the estate sale proceeds to your brokerage?" I asked Claire. Her eyes shifted to me. "That's separate." "Did you disclose that $132,000 from my household property went into Caldwell Transition LLC? This meeting is about the house. Your LLC received the money." Claire closed the folder halfway. "I'm trying to solve the thing that can still be solved." Robert finally spoke. "Claire, were estate proceeds connected to this transaction in any representation made to the buyer?" "No." "Were they intended to fund anything required for this closing?" "No." I waited. Claire added, "They were family funds being used for family obligations." "My funds," I said. She looked straight at me. "That's what we're here to stop fighting about." I took out the timeline I had made the night before. Not a speech. Dates. March 29th, I said. Marjorie was told I had moved to senior living. Claire leaned back. April 7th. Property photographer entered the community. Robert looked down at his notes. April 16th. Residential appraiser entered. I placed the access report on the table. May 4th. Listing paperwork in my name. Another page. May 9th. My old tablet accessed my email account from the house. 6 minutes later, an authorization email was sent from my address. Claire folded her arms. May 11th. Purchase contract accepted in my name. Then I put Lot 47 on the table. The paper had softened at the folds. The black ink still showed. May 13th. I found this under Ellen's piano. Nobody spoke. That was the day Jason told me to stay out of your lives. Claire's voice came out quieter. You had already started the possession case. Yes. You had already decided to throw us out. I had decided the temporary tenancy was over. So now you want every event before that date to look sinister. I slid the timeline toward Robert. No, I want the dates to stay in the order they happened. That was the piece Claire could not rearrange. The photographer came before the argument. The appraiser came before the argument. The listing came before the argument. The email came before the argument. The purchase contract came before the argument. Whatever story she told about a father retaliating after his children demanded boundaries had to get past the calendar first. Robert picked up the page. Claire stared at Lot 47. Then she said, Mom would hate this. My fingers rested against the edge of the table. There had been a night, years earlier, when Ellen made me crawl behind the piano with a flashlight because she wanted the serial number added to our insurance file. I had complained about the dust. She had handed me a pen. If it matters, write it down. That was Ellen, not a ghost summoned to win arguments. A woman who wrote serial numbers because property disappeared when people trusted memory too much. I put the sticker back into my folder. I'm not signing. Claire's chair made a sharp sound against the carpet. You're choosing to destroy this. No. I'm choosing not to approve it after the fact. Jason is going to get sued. Jason has his own creditors. My investment is going to collapse. I looked at her. It was the first time she had said my investment instead of family obligations. Robert heard it too. His pen moved again. Claire noticed and changed direction. Fine. Then write down every word. That seems to be what everyone wants. By the afternoon, the buyer withdrew. The closing attorney confirmed the transaction would not proceed because seller authority could not be established, and no deed had ever been executed by me. Robert sent formal notice that the file was terminated and that his office review would continue separately. The house was no longer under contract. For several minutes, I sat in Martin's office with that email open. We had stopped the sale. Nothing about it felt light. Jason called before I left. I got another collection notice. I'm sorry. Are you? The question came fast. I looked through the office window at traffic moving below us. Yes. Then help me. I'm not paying it. Silence. Jason said, "You could fix this in one day." I know. That was why the answer mattered. May 28th came without an appeal in the possession case. Claire and Jason had both received notice of their rights. The appeal deadline passed without a filing, and Martin confirmed no stay had been entered. They were betting you would ratify the sale, he said. They thought I'd stop enforcement. They still may think that. The next morning, the clerk issued the writ of possession. By lunchtime, it had been delivered to the Iredell County Sheriff's Office for scheduling. The community security manager called me that afternoon. "Mr. Caldwell, once the sheriff completes the possession and confirms the property has been returned to you, do you want resident credentials reset?" "After execution," I said. "Not before." "Understood. Gate codes, resident tags, and household access only after we receive confirmation." A second call came later from the Sheriff's Civil Division. The execution was scheduled for June 3rd. I wrote the date beside May 13th, 21 days. Exactly 3 weeks from the afternoon Jason told me to stay out of their lives. Claire and Jason knew the writ existed. They knew the appeal window had closed. There would be no surprise about the legal process. What they still seemed unable to believe was that I would let it finish. The security manager emailed one final confirmation. "Credentials remain active until sheriff returns possession to owner. Reset immediately afterward upon owner instruction." I typed my reply carefully. "After the sheriff returns possession, reset it." The sheriff's deputy called me at 9:47 on June 3rd. "Mr. Caldwell, possession has been returned to you." I was standing in my own foyer when he said it. The front door was open behind me, and the smell of cardboard, dust, and the lemon cleaner Claire liked had mixed into something stale. A locksmith waited near the kitchen with a small metal case at his feet. Beside him, a woman from the inventory company held a clipboard and photographed the condition of each room. "Thank you," I said. The deputy reminded me about the scheduled process for Claire and Jason to retrieve personal belongings. I confirmed the window Martin had arranged, then ended the call. Only then did I phone the community security manager. "It's complete," I said. "Reset the resident credentials." Keys clicked on his end. "Understood." A few minutes later, the locksmith removed the first cylinder from the front door. Metal scraped against metal. That sound carried farther through the house than I expected. The call from the gatehouse came at 6:11 that evening. By then, the new front lock had clicked into place. The alarm code had been reset, and the old resident tags had been removed from the community system. None of it happened before the deputy left. I had waited for that line to be crossed because I wanted no argument later about who had the right to open which door. I was still inside with the inventory specialist, working from room to room against the probate list. The security manager put me on speaker from his desk. "Mr. Caldwell, Claire Caldwell and Jason Caldwell are at the resident gate. Their credentials are inactive." Jason's voice came faintly through the manager's phone. "We live here. Check it again." The manager answered him, and I heard every word. "Sir, possession was returned to the owner this morning. Your residential access is no longer active." Claire spoke next. Her voice was clearer. "My father did this today? The reset was requested after the sheriff completed the writ." A pause. Then Jason said, "Call him." The manager asked me, "Do you want to speak with them?" "No." I looked toward the dining room, where a pale rectangle on the wall marked the place Ellen's painting had hung. "Give them Martin Wells's letter." Paper rustled at the gatehouse. Martin had prepared 2 copies. They explained that Claire and Jason could collect personal belongings only during the supervised window, that they were not authorized to enter the residence without arrangement, and that disputes over household property would be handled through counsel. Claire said something too low for me to hear. Jason did not bother lowering his voice. "This is insane." The manager asked whether I needed anything else. "No, Thank you. I ended the call. For 3 weeks, the sentence had stayed with me. Stay out of our lives. We don't need you anymore. Now they were outside a gate, leading to a house they had treated as if my name on the deed were a technical inconvenience. I did not feel like celebrating. There was too much missing. The inventory specialist and I reached the living room just before 7. Ellen's piano stood where it always had, though North Lake had removed its sale tag after the dispute. I took the folded Lot 47 sticker from my wallet and laid it on the closed lid. The piano had made it back. The silver had not. Neither had the landscape painting or the crystal glasses. One empty patch on a shelf showed a clean outline where a decorative box had protected the wood from years of sunlight. I had not noticed that box missing until then. The specialist photographed the space. Was it on your probate list? She asked. Yes. Then we add it. Simple words. Another line. Another thing. Gone. I put Lot 47 back into my wallet. Before leaving the room, I checked the piano bench. Ellen's sheet music was still inside, stacked crookedly under a felt cover. One book had her pencil marks above the staff. I closed the lid without moving anything. The house was mine again, but possession had not restored what had been taken from it. The supervised retrieval took place the next afternoon. Claire arrived first with a rented van and 2 empty plastic bins. Jason came behind her in his truck. Martin had arranged for a neutral representative to remain present, and the inventory specialist stayed to distinguish their personal property from items under dispute. Claire stopped in the foyer when she saw me. You had security humiliate us at the gate. I wasn't at the gate. You told them not to let us in. After the sheriff returned possession to me, her mouth tightened. You could have called. You had the court notices. That isn't the same thing. No, it isn't. I handed her the property list. Items marked disputed. Stay here until ownership is resolved. Your clothes, personal furniture, electronics, and anything clearly yours can go today. Claire looked at the pages without taking them. You chose strangers over your own children. The woman with the clipboard is here because strangers bought things from this house. Jason shut his eyes for a moment. Claire turned toward him. Don't. He opened them again. Don't what? Start. His laugh was short and empty. You mean, don't talk. Claire's voice dropped. Not here. Jason looked at me instead. She wrote the email. The room went still, except for the click of the inventory specialist's camera in the dining room. Claire turned. Jason. He pointed at her without looking away from me. She told me what to send from your tablet. I opened the account. I hit send. She wrote the words. Claire's face changed, but she recovered quickly. He knew exactly what we were doing. I knew you said, Dad agreed. Jason shot back. You kept saying he'd sign once the buyer was committed. You moved the property. I know. You took the money. I got $27,000. You moved $105 into your deal. Claire stepped closer to him. You're saying whatever saves you now. Jason pulled out his phone. I already sent Martin the messages. For the first time since I had found the lot sticker, Claire had no immediate answer. I looked at Jason. What you just said doesn't erase what you did. His shoulders dropped. I know. Good. That was all. 2 days later, Robert Greene asked me to attend the brokerage review with Martin. North Lake had provided its preserved intake records. Jason had supplied the original message export. The email provider activity showed the old tablet session. Gate records placed Claire and Jason at the house. None of those facts stood alone. Together, they had dates. I put the timeline on the conference table. March 29th, I said. Claire tells a neighbor I've relocated to senior living. Robert made a note. April 7th, property photography. April 16th, residential appraisal. May 4th, listing agreement in my name. May 9th, my email account is accessed from the tablet at the house. 6 minutes later, the authorization email is sent. May 11th, buyer acceptance is signed in my name. Claire's attorney sat beside her now. Claire said nothing. I placed the white sticker on the table. May 13th, I find lot 47 under my wife's piano. That afternoon, my children tell me to stay out of their lives. Robert studied the page. Martin slid the preserved message export beside it, then the account activity showing the tablet session. No one announced that a single page solved everything. That was not what the records did. They supported one another. The order mattered. The sale did not begin because I reacted to being rejected by my children. The sale was already moving before I knew there was anything to react to. Claire finally spoke. Dad had discussed selling for months. I nodded. I discussed the possibility. I did not sign these documents. Her attorney touched her sleeve before she could answer. Robert closed the file in front of him. After the meeting, he walked Martin and me to the lobby. "Mr. Caldwell," he said, "I have to ask. Do you still intend to sell the house eventually?" Through the glass doors, afternoon sun flashed off windshields in the parking lot. "Maybe." Robert waited. "But not through Claire. Not for Jason's creditors. Not to cover money that was already taken. And not today." He nodded once. I looked down at the folder under my arm. On top sat the forged listing agreement, my name written by somebody else. For weeks, everyone had acted as though the only question was whether I would finally sign what they had already decided. That question was over. The house might still be sold one day, but the next signature on it would be mine. The first envelope from Claire's attorney arrived 3 weeks after the brokerage review. Martin slid it across his desk without opening with a joke or warning. By then, that usually meant the document spoke loudly enough for itself. Claire was offering an accounting, not an apology. The letter listed the proceeds Northlake had paid into Caldwell Transition LLC, the $105,000 routed toward her real estate obligation, the amount used for Jason's creditors, and the balance still frozen. It also proposed repayment for personal property that could not be recovered. I read the numbers twice. "Is she admitting everything?" I asked. Martin shook his head. "She is offering to resolve the civil claims without forcing every issue through trial. That is not the same thing. So, the language stays careful. Very. The careful language did not bother me anymore. I had learned to pay more attention to what money moved, which document existed first, and who had to return what. Northlake cooperated with the recovery effort. Several buyers returned items after being shown the probate distribution and ownership dispute. Others had already resold what they bought. The landscape painting came back with a scratch near one corner of the frame. The botanical prints returned in different packaging. The mahogany side table arrived with one leg wrapped in moving blankets. Ellen's silver did not come back. Neither did the crystal glasses from our wedding. A settlement check could put a value beside both. It could not put either one back in the cabinet. I signed the settlement only after Martin walked me through every page. This time, my signature had the backward curl in the T. The agreement required Claire to account for the money she controlled and repay the amount assigned to the missing property. It did not buy her access to me. Martin made sure the two issues stayed separate. Money could settle a civil claim. It could not settle whether I wanted my daughter at my table. Claire's brokerage ended its relationship with her after its internal review. Robert told me in writing because the disputed listing involved my property and his office had agreed to provide the outcome directly related to the file. The state licensing matter took longer. Months, not days. When the disciplinary order became public, Martin sent me the link and told me to read the findings instead of the headlines. Claire received a suspension and conditions she would have to satisfy before returning to practice. I closed the page after one reading. There was no satisfaction in staring at it. The investment she had tried to rescue failed too. That part came through the settlement records because her real estate obligation was one of the destinations for the estate money. Nobody swooped in with another bridge loan. I did not replace the money she lost. For the first time in my life, one of my children had a financial emergency, and my checkbook stayed closed. Claire wrote to me once after the settlement. Her email began, "I'm sorry. Everything got so out of hand." I read that sentence 3 times. Everything. A useful word when you do not want to name anything. The forged listing, the purchase contract, the email, the household items sold without permission, the story about senior living. None of those appeared in her message. I forwarded the email to Martin for the file and did not answer. Jason's first repayment was $200. The transfer hit my account on a Friday morning with a note that said only, "First payment. No speech. No promise." $200 did not cover much. That was not the point. He had moved into a one-bedroom apartment near his job after losing access to the lake house. The collection process did not disappear because he told the truth about Claire. He negotiated a payment plan with his creditors, sold his truck for something cheaper, and stopped calling me every time a notice arrived. For nearly 2 months, we barely spoke. Then another $200 arrived. After that, $300. The amounts changed. The dates did not. On the fourth payment, Jason called. "Did you get it?" "Yes." "Okay." He waited. I could hear traffic through his car speaker and the hollow click of a turn signal. "Dad," he said, "I know sending money doesn't fix what I did." No. I knew enough to ask questions, and I didn't. I looked at the receipt on my screen. "No," I said again. "You didn't." Another pause. "Can I call next week?" "You can call Sunday." That was how contact started again. Not because he was my son, because he stopped asking me to erase what being my son had cost him. The house changed after they left. At first, I kept noticing absence. A pale rectangle on a wall, an empty shelf, a drawer that opened too easily because the silver was gone. Then other things returned. The painting, the side table, boxes from North Lake. The piano stayed where it had always been. One evening, I opened the bench and found Ellen's marked sheet music exactly where I had seen it after the writ. Pencil notes leaned beside the bars in her narrow handwriting. I sat there a long time without touching the keys. Replacing the silver had crossed my mind. So had finding another set of crystal glasses. I did neither. Some things were gone because people I loved had taken them. Buying copies would not change that. By late summer, I knew something else too. I did not want the lake house anymore. Not because Claire had said it was too large, not because Jason needed money, not because maintaining the dock cost too much. I simply no longer wanted to organize my life around rooms built for people who had stopped living there. Robert referred me to an agent from another firm who had never worked with Claire. Her name was Susan Parker. At our first meeting, she placed a listing agreement on the dining table and told me to take it home before signing. "I don't need to rush you," Susan said. "That might be the best sales pitch I've heard all year." She smiled. "Then I'll stop talking." I read every page that night. Commission, listing term, showing rules, seller disclosures, authority. My authority. The next morning, I signed. The T dropped down, curled backward, then moved forward through Caldwell. I stopped, with the pen still touching the paper. For months, copies of my name had appeared beneath choices I had never made. This one belonged there. The house sold later that fall through an ordinary closing. No secret buyer, no family pressure, no rushed signature waiting at the bottom of a folder. I used part of the proceeds to buy a smaller house outside Charlotte, with enough room for the piano, my books, and a guest room I did not promise to anyone permanently. The rest went back into my retirement accounts and savings. Jason came over after I moved. He called first. That detail mattered. When I opened the door, he stood on the porch holding a cardboard box. "What's that?" I asked. "Kitchen stuff. Mine this time." I let him in. We carried the box together, and when we passed the piano, he slowed down. "Sounds different in here," he said. "You haven't heard it yet." "I mean the room." I understood. A smaller room gives every sound less distance to hide in. Jason put the box on the kitchen counter, then pulled an envelope from his pocket. "I can make this month's payment next Friday. Keep the envelope." He looked at me carefully. "You sure?" I said, "Keep the envelope." I didn't say skip the payment. For the first time in a long while, he laughed without asking me for something afterward. His phone buzzed. He checked it, frowned, and slid it back into his pocket. "You want to know who that was?" "No." That seemed to surprise him. I picked up my new house key from the counter. Before the lake house, I had thought helping my children meant making sure they never reached a locked door. Now I knew better than to promise that. Jason followed me toward the porch. "Sunday still good?" he asked. "Call first." He nodded. I turned the key in the lock behind us. My name was on the deed. My signature was on the papers. And this time, nobody had put either one there for me. What this story leaves you with is a simple warning. Love does not require you to surrender your name, your property, or your right to make your own decisions. You can help your adult children and still expect them to respect a boundary. You can give them a place to live without giving them ownership. You can pay a bill once without agreeing to become the person who pays every bill forever. The moment help becomes something others feel entitled to control, you have to stop and look at what is actually happening. You also learn why records matter. A conversation can be twisted. A memory can be challenged. A promise can be described differently by two people. But a dated notice, a property record, an email log, a receipt, a court filing, or a signed agreement gives you something solid to stand on. That does not mean you should treat every family relationship like a lawsuit. It means that when money, housing, debt, or legal authority is involved, you should know what you own, what you agreed to, and what someone else is claiming you agreed to. Thomas did not win because he shouted louder than his children. He won because he stopped allowing urgency to make decisions for him. He did not sign documents just because other people had already made plans around his signature. He did not pay Jason's debt just because Jason was afraid of the consequences. He did not forgive Claire simply because she used the word sorry. He waited for actions to match words. That is an important difference. An apology that avoids naming the harm is not the same as accountability, and forgiveness does not require restoring the same access that allowed the harm to happen. There is another lesson here for parents who have spent years fixing problems for grown children. Every time you remove a consequence, you may be teaching someone that the consequence will always become your responsibility. Helping once can be generous. Becoming the permanent rescue plan can slowly erase the line between support and dependence. Sometimes, the most useful thing you can do is let another adult pay the debt, make the repayment, find the apartment, repair the relationship, and prove over time that they can live differently. And if you are the adult child in a situation like this, the lesson runs the other way. A parent's house is not your future inheritance while that parent is still alive. Their savings are not your emergency fund. Their age does not cancel their authority over their own life. If you want trust, you cannot build it by making decisions first and asking for approval after the damage is done. So where would you have drawn the line? Would you have stopped helping sooner? Or would you have given your children another chance before taking legal action? Have you ever had someone call you selfish because you finally said no to something they had grown used to receiving? And if a family member broke your trust the way Thomas's children did, what would you need to see before you allowed that person back into your life? Whatever your answer is, one principle is worth keeping. A healthy boundary is not revenge. Sometimes it is simply the point where you stop paying for someone else's choices and start taking responsibility for your own.